Welcome to All Things Engineering by EIT. This is a podcast where we cover industry insights, emerging trends, and practical knowledge across engineering disciplines.
Hi, I'm Steve Mackay, and I'm the Dean at EIT, Engineering Institute of Technology, and I'm with my happy colleague here.
Hi, I'm Carolina. I'm the Analytics and Strategy Manager here at EIT.
Carolina, I would like to get some understanding of this job report that you've prepared. You've spent a lot of time on it, and you've got your intrepid team working on it, and there's some really interesting insights that have come out of it. Perhaps you can give us a bit of a quick background to what the report looks like and how it's structured.
Oh, sure, Steve. I'm happy to be here. This report, as you said, it's been a team working on it for a little while. It's been a lot of work, but very proud, very excited about what we've been able to put together. So essentially, we've gone out and analyzed job adverts related to engineering and technology in 7 markets, which we can get into in a minute. We managed to gather about just over 316,000 job adverts.
That's an amazing number of job adverts, I must say. I mean, 300,000 jobs with all the issues of trying to scrape them off the different websites is an impressive task.
Yeah.
And I know there would have been a lot of challenges gathering that information.
Absolutely.
So,
even looking at the sources that we felt would give us a better picture of the market and the best data, because websites will vary how they present the info. So trying to get consistent details out of them so that it adds more value. I guess categorizing that data so that it actually is meaningful, because as you would know, when there's a lot of data, the problem is what do you do with it and how do you make sense of it. So it's been a really challenging but rewarding project, I would say. So happy to drive you through what we found.
So I know, and everyone should be aware, obviously we've picked a few markets, you've picked a few markets, and obviously there's biases in the data you gathered because of that, which is fine. And obviously the job adverts don't always necessarily mean there's a job. It could be an employer that's hoping to find someone and they don't actually find someone at all. So there are a lot of biases and stuff like that, but certainly the overall trends, I think, are very solid from what I've seen. So perhaps we could just explore those in a bit more detail.
So hopefully whoever's listening to this podcast and like seeing the recording, we've got a bit of an interactive dashboard that we've built. So that's going to be available soon on the EIT website for everyone to go into. But essentially, the markets we've gone in and looked at data include Australia, Canada, Ireland, New Zealand, South Africa, the United Kingdom, and the US. And as you were saying, big bias when you consider the size of some of those markets. But what we've done is look at them separately, independent of each other, but obviously also holistically to understand across the board there are some commonalities which we will go into. So hopefully everyone's able to see. Essentially, if we dive into one of the markets, for example, we've got Australia. The dashboard will let you navigate through different tabs. What we've looked at is basically initially the disciplines. So what are people asking in terms of demand for jobs in the traditional disciplines?
If I can just jump in, you've got 20,000 job adverts on the left-hand side. That's brilliant.
Correct, yeah.
And this is for Australia. So I suppose what's the benefit of someone looking at this? This is basically telling them, as I understand it, this is a great, these are the sort of trends in your job.
It's a good point. Thanks, Steve. Look, essentially this is a snapshot and people should take care of understanding that. It's the plan is to be repeating this project through time, and that's where we can really build and understand trends. But at the moment, it is a snapshot. We collected data in February 2025. So this is pretty much, if you went on a website, job advert website on February for engineering or technology in these markets that we've mentioned, this is what the data was showing back then. And as you said, there were around 20,000 job listings, for example, for Australia, from a total of 9,000 employers. All that data is available in the dashboard, which will be great.
So what are the main breakdowns in job disciplines there?
So
if I could ask.
For Australia, we found that mechanical engineering leads the way.
It's quite bizarre then, actually, because I would have thought civil engineering would be by far the most dominant.
Yep.
I mean, construction, infrastructure development. So mechanical's top, and then after that is...
It is electrical and electronics, and then civil. So not far off. They're definitely the top 3, but Yeah.
And the other important thing is that it's not just engineering professionals.
Correct.
It's actually all the way down to tradies. Isn't
Correct.
it?
Yeah, actually for Australia. And this was interesting and obviously open to criticism and improvements. But what we've done is based on the description of the ad and what the employer was looking for, we've told our tools to categorize it into occupation groups. So as you pointed out, Steve, for Australia, craft and related trade workers was actually the highest
So what's
group.
it, about 60% or 30%, 40%?
Yeah, about 40, I think.
40%, say.
Yeah, 9,000, just over 9,200. It is,
Trades are really, really important,
And
obviously.
that's actually followed by technicians. So as you
Yeah.
said, it's obviously a very quite a hands-on type of market for
And I
engineering.
see the
technology.
government announcing today that they're going to split that focus not just on university anymore, but 50% sort of TAFEs, vocational skills,
yeah.
and 50% universities. Because obviously, with AI coming in, I think skills are absolutely critical. Show me an AI tool that's going to lay bricks for you.
Absolutely.
not at this stage.
No, especially at 40-degree weather. So
Yeah,
if we
so
get
what are the other 40 degree. What are the other observations that you've got that you were pointing out to me?
Look, obviously, for anyone that's curious, the geographic distribution, and I think in some markets, it's been interesting to note the disparity, the regional hubs, which, I think it follows market needs and the industries, but it does show how there's definitely some disparities in markets at the moment. Yeah, for WA, mostly on the East Coast. But if you look at mining, which obviously the dashboard lets you play around a little bit and you can select a discipline. We did put mining, metallurgical and geological engineering. And if you switch to that, then it's refreshing the data. You do have to give it a little bit of time. There's thousands of jobs, as we said, but it does skew heavily towards Western Australia, where the mining is quite strong. So,
and then if you look at the actual sort of skills required, you have that incredible
yes, that's an
little-
exciting area.
that word cloud, which is just brilliant, and it gives you such a great insight into where the skills requirements are. Do you mind going to that?
Yes, let's go for a second. I was seeing if it would load. It was being quite quick a moment ago, but as I said, it's quite a bit of data.
Well,
but
there's 300,000 jobs it's trying to load up, I suppose. So
yeah, so it did refresh at the moment. And sorry, just quickly, but yeah, if you're seeing the screen that we're sharing, there's the job dominates in Western Australia for mining specifically, and But if we go to the skills, as you said, what we've done, and this was a bit of a challenge because how to, I guess, group so much info into, in a way that you can digest it. So we've basically looked at the skills being asked in the job, both, and categorize them as technical or soft skills, and that's one of the actually takeaways
this is,
of the
soft skills.
This is at the moment technical skills.
Technical
so if you
skills,
look at
okay.
it is technical skills across all
So you
occupation
can
groups,
see-
but this is an emerging discipline, so it's probably the
Yeah.
smallest. We can go. Which one would you like to see, Steve?
Well, technical skills are quite interesting. So project management, software,
Yeah.
medical.
Maybe we can pick. If I pick mechanical, just to change for a second, as a discipline, because there's obviously more volume.
Yeah, there we go. Hydraulics,
Exactly.
conditioning, welding. Welding's big. Repairs, fault
Maintenance,
finding,
troubleshooting. Yeah.
So those are all the skills really required, and that's something again AI would have huge difficulty replicating, because that is a real skill in your brain. And
Diagnostic. I know. Yeah, you can use a lot of
Diagnostic
tools, but it still needs that human element to, to
and this
understand.
is the emphasis that universities and TAFEs, colleges have to have, is skills, because that is the future, no doubt about it.
And look, across the board, some of them are pretty common, but it
Can you
will.
go to electrical and have a look at
Yeah,
electrical?
sure. And you can drill down to an
Yes.
occupation group. So if you're interested more at management level versus hands-on or craft, role, it does adjust, and you can see the variances there and what you might need to be looking forward to developing if you want to get to that next step as a manager, for example. But this is
the
electrical.
difference in
Yeah.
skills,
So at the moment, we're showing you the technical skills for electrical and electronics engineering job roles in Australia as of published in Feb. But if you want to pick, say, the technicians only.
So you can see a total change in
It
the
does.
skills required. So, I mean, here you've got PLCs,
You've got fault finding,
wiring, fault finding, programming,
instrumentation.
Modbus.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all motors, that's instrumentation, preventative. So that shows you again the huge change in the skills requirements.
But if we switch gears to managers, different workload, so definitely different skill set required if you're aiming
so the
for...
ones I see there jumping out of management, obviously
project
projects,
management, yep. Mm-hmm.
Stakeholder, power,
people,
yep.
relationship,
So that's, again, an indication of the sort of skills you need if you want to be successful in as a manager. And again, hugely useful because that's from the real source, the job itself.
Yeah, what's being required exactly.
So now if we can just go out a bit and say, okay, what are the so this is done for all the different countries. What do you see as the biggest differences between countries? I mean, every country has their own particular mix of skills required. What do you see as the big differences between the different countries?
The main difference is driven by, I mean, we don't have it in the dashboard, that's for people to, there is a written report which you can get to, and that's highlighted there. But I guess the main differences are driven by the disciplines that are in demand. So, for example, as we said before, the bias in the data, US is a massive data set that we've got in the list. It's about, I think, over 200,000 job adverts there. And it's heavily skewed towards software development and ICT, similarly with UK. So obviously the skills required in that market.
So software is big in the States compared to Australia, for example.
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah.
And the AI, mention of AI, you need AI tools?
Look, it's come up, and we did do another report back in August of last year, but this one's been a little bit more, I guess, critical and analytical. And I would say that mentions of AI and cloud computing and digital skills are more prominent in this data set that I've seen in the past. So as we said before, the idea is to repeat this exercise and actually compare better and give you trends. But it's definitely
AI
coming up.
It's coming up, but it's not dominant.
It is not dominant, exactly. So this whole thing and this, discourse of the AI is taking over our jobs in engineering and changing the world, it's not quite as aggressive.
What is evident is you need skills in a different area.
Exactly. And what is interesting...
And I suppose just want to quickly ask you, programming. So programming's big in the States. And yet, in Australia, for example, SAFCA, not a big requirement.
Look,
it's there, but
it's exactly it's there. It's not as big, and I guess that was one of the things that stood out. If we go at software tools, for example, which we try to same thing, extract from these job adverts, you will see Python being mentioned here and there outside of the traditional disciplines that you would expect, like software or ICT. We're actually now in this emerging and interdisciplinary, and Python is there, and I'm sure if we moved around,
and
you'll see it.
And obviously the Microsoft suite is all over the place on everything.
Absolutely.
So Microsoft and
Excel in particular, but not highlighted here.
I'm surprised to see HubSpot in an engineering thing, because HubSpot's a marketing thing.
It is, but I think it's probably because we've looked more holistically at job roles, that the sales and service would probably be, and it's interesting because as you said, not many maybe engineers would think they need it, but if you have it, it's probably a plus on your skill set. Not sure.
So the AutoCAD obviously is the big driver, Office, Microsoft, which makes sense. So certainly, if you don't have digital skills, you really are going to struggle in today's market. But the question I want to ask you, and it's probably a bit of left from field, what about tradies with software skills? Is there a requirement there or not?
There is, but I think it's heavily, obviously the more that are automation based, you'll get your...
but still Microsoft
there's SAP, because we're in electrical at the moment, again it will change. There is SAP, knowledge of SAP.
That's probably for big companies.
And there's some specific ones. We did bring some out in the report just for picking up. But
Excel, Word, and obviously the
Microsoft. Simpro. I'll change in mechanical because there's some. There was a few related to water flow, and for I think for piping and industrial type of work. That we noticed come up. Still niche, but depends when you drill down.
Even if you're a trader, you do need digital skills. There's no way of getting around that now.
And I think, as we pointed out, if you started changing and moving across that ladder, you might see, well, in order to get to that next position, you will need certain skills and knowledge of software. So it's probably...
Now you've given me this little summary cheat sheet here. If I can just ask a few questions based on that. You've made a really interesting comment there. job adverts don't require don't always specify education and experience. What's your take on that? How do you back that up?
Well, it's an interesting thing, and as we said, the websites will vary how they present the information. Sometimes it's just to get that initial interest, and once they're in, they'll definitely tell you, do you have these or you need these? Or sometimes I think it's even expected, depending on the role in the company. They might not specifically say they want you to have a bachelor, but they kind of feel like it's obvious that you need to, for example, in that particular case. So what we noticed is that, not all the job adverts were listing education requirements, but it did vary. Trying to think off the top of my head, I think it was...
I mean, there's no doubt in America, and I suppose even Australia and South Africa, they've reduced the requirement for graduates. They've said, look, you don't need to be a graduate to do certain jobs. So certainly that's happening. Whether it's for engineers, I'm not sure, and certainly for trades, you probably need some apprenticeship or some background there. But certainly there's a lot of jobs in the middle which you don't need the actual qualification.
And I think the split, what qual is actually right. That there's some markets that are, for example, in South Africa, from memory, they're very open to certifications and other types of training, not just, it doesn't mean you have to be at uni, higher education, bachelor's and master's. But in general, if you did have to look at the data, again, holistically, bachelor's was probably quite common across all the markets and all the disciplines and all the job roles. So it's still, maybe you can help me understand this qualification inflation, Steve, because I did see this come up and I was, okay, what does that really mean? And how would you explain qualification inflation?
Well, I think, everyone's doing degrees and up to masters and whatever. And I think ultimately the job may not require that level. And I think where the job does require your skill is, as you pointed out there, the skill level itself, as opposed to the knowledge of the degree, is becoming increasingly important. And I just wanted to delve into a little bit there. One of the comments you made, Carolina, is soft skills are becoming really important, such as communication, adaptability, and leadership. And that's quite an interesting comment to make. Yeah,
I love this area of the report, Steve. I don't know how much.
Most techies avoid, communication. Working in teams is a real pest, as we all know. And,
might be why it's being asked more now, because I don't think.
Certainly, those skills are really critical, and you're working with customers.
Yeah, reliability, leadership.
There's a really interesting comment there as well. I see authenticity.
Oh, yeah.
Being a human being and relating to others. Assertiveness.
Judgment, delegation. These are things that, how do you really teach these? I don't know, but we need to. I think education systems as a whole around the world, I would dare to generalize, but are behind on this.
And the great thing about these skills is that a computer or AI tool won't be show emotions, and so these are really skills you can distinguish yourself. And it's like, I was looking at a report last night. If you want to get a job, try and relate to the person interviewing you. Try and come across as a human being capable of doing the job. So certainly those are really, really important skills.
Yeah, it's emotional intelligence. At the end of the day, as you said, machines will not be doing every job out there, and you need to interact with people. And I think, I thought there were some amazing soft skills, and amazing because I just didn't think that they would even come up. And the fact that they did in the data, and I bet there might be small numbers because the focus is still on technical skills heavily, but across the board, collaboration, teamwork, problem solving, all markets, all disciplines that we've looked at have these. So definitely it is important. I would definitely recommend people to think about how are their skills in that area.
Carolina, one of the perennial problems with graduates, and you've mentioned it in your cheat sheet here, one of the perennial problems is when I graduate, I want to get a job. And the first thing the employer says is, okay, mate, you've got the job if you can show me your experience. Now, how do you pull that up from your charts here? How did you pull that information out?
Look, probably, let me see if I've got the right one.
So basically, when you as a graduate, you're looking for a job, And the first thing the employer will say, yeah, no, sounds like you've got a really good grade. How much experience have you got? And of course, you have to say, well, no, I've just started. Please give me a job. Please let me try. And that's always the big challenge.
It is. And look, I wish I had the answer. I think it's a lot of work. There needs to be more collaboration between industry and education institutions, because you're right. You leave uni and you've been taught for how many years? And at the end of the day, it's like when you land the job and you're in that factory or in that desk, what do you do? So I think one of the, points that we noted is that there aren't that many entry-level positions in the market.
Pure entry-level.
It's actually lower, which is a problem for our graduates. They seem to be, having a hard time to land the positions because there's probably more offer, more demand than offer. Yeah.
So that's why I think, and we've been arguing about this over quite a few years, is that there's no doubt that the graduate today needs to have the experience, the internships before they get their degree. In other words, working in industry, getting a job is probably the most important thing. And I know it sounds a bit odd, but working and then getting your degree is actually a key movement forward. And it's hard to tell graduates that, look, you need to have that experience. But I think that's the only way forward.
Yeah, I don't think it's easy, but I think we have to, as a community in the industry, come to grips with this and give more opportunities to students and graduates, recent graduates. Because one of the other interesting highlights in the report is that some markets are quite open to experience in place of degrees. Obviously, if you have the degree, great, but it actually, I think, our argument is that perhaps part of the reason why not all jobs were listing a qualification requirement is because they're actually flexible on people having this or not. And you see it, they might say preferable, but it's not necessarily required. So that's something I think, hope.
So if you had to distill this whole report in a few sentences. I know it's very hard to distill 350,000 job adverts into a few comments. I mean, obviously, if I can just kick off and maybe you can correct me. The first one, obviously, is skills. Skills are really important, and you cannot get away from that. Skills are what's going to drive the job market going forward. And this report clearly shows you that skills are required. And they're the hardest to get, by the way. I mean, there's no doubt anyone can read a book, but to actually get the skills is really hard. And the other interesting thing I take away from your report is the need not just for technical skills, but for actual HR type skills.
Soft skills, absolutely.
Soft skills, teamwork, project management, those are all really, really important.
Yeah, and I think, and the third point I would maybe bring is that continuous learning. So even experienced engineers, you'll find yourselves realizing, I'm sure, that it's not enough. You got to keep learning. You really should not stop learning, because the market's changing, and this digital, fluency that we're all required to have now, it might have not been taught to us years ago, and we need to do it. So
definitely continuous learning, and that's really, and it's a very enjoyable process, I think. And it doesn't mean going on a physical course but
or
just
years of it. It's
having a mentor.
Yeah.
Hey, can you show me how to use this software tool, or let's go and walk around the site and have a look. And that's really, really critical.
And applied knowledge, I think that's probably quite hard to get, because the concepts and the theory, you need it, but how do I use this then in the real world? And if you're being taught by someone who's done it and has gone through the pains of setting up, your code and your PLC, and it doesn't work and it gets everything wrong, but that's real value added when you can find those gems out there in the market.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that summary, Carolina. I just want to obviously commend Carolina on this, and I want to suggest to everyone, think as you go through this report, look at some of the skills and see how they align with what you're doing, and look at the incredible opportunities and the incredible richness of opportunities in engineering, whether you're a tradie, electrician, all the way up to doing your doctorate or master degree. The opportunities are huge and just growing by the day. And it's all about skills. And I think the future is really, really bright, no matter what happens.
I will close off also by saying the link to the report and where you can access the dashboard will be in the episode description, so you can all go there and access it. And my email is actually, hopefully I don't get spam, but it's in the report. So if anyone picks up any error, any horrors or suggestions, I know already I've been getting a bit of feedback on more markets. We might want to add other markets into the mix. So please, feel free to send me a note.
Like the Spanish-speaking world, the second biggest.
Sí.
But certainly, Carolina, it's a beautiful report, and I think it's really going to be add huge value. And certainly, it's helping us with creating new courses to
Industry
try and
aligned,
target these areas, because it's just incredible wealth of opportunity out there. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much,
See you next
Carolina.
time.
Yeah.